That's the clip out. Cool. Is that on? Cool. Thank you very much indeed. So the letting update I want to talk about tonight relates to rent arrears. Can I just very quickly do a couple of quick questions? Can we just do a show of hands? Who's had rent arrears at least once in the last 12 months? Okay, 30%, 20%. Hands up who self-manages their property in terms of dealing with management, maintenance of their properties. Hands up. And who thinks they've been having more rent arrears in the last couple of years compared to the last 5 years, 10 years, for example, by show of hands? Okay, a few of you thinking more. All right, thank you very much. I think I think rent arrears are going to be the biggest issue for us as landlords going forward. And there's three figures as to why, 1, 2, and 5. 1, because that's what incomes are going up by, apparently, next year. 2, because that's what inflation is probably going to be. So actually, people's take-home pay is actually going to be in a negative position. And 5, because that's what rent increases will be next year. So the proportion of someone's take-home pay that is going to be going on rent is going to be increasing because of the 1, 2, 5 scenario. There is a safe zone, and it's worth writing this down, that someone's rent should be no more than 30% of their take-home pay. The second it goes above 40%, you're in that sort of red line position. And clearly, as time goes by, the next 5 years, I think all of us, by default, will be gradually going more and more into that red line. And I think it's something we all need to be aware of. People's financial commitments are growing, increasingly on material possessions. When my parents bought their first place when they were 22, 23, they had one armchair and that's all they had. Everybody now wants proper TVs, etc., etc. So we're just spending more. There's unseen expenditure, or there is anyway on my credit card bill, in terms of music, transport and food through apps and everything else that we don't physically see. So we're not able really to manage our monies in the same way as we historically were, because we're not spending in the same light. And finally, there's the growth of unsecured debt. The average household in the UK has just over 10k of debt on it, which has been rising by about 15% in the last 12 months. So all of this is a big warning sign for us. We all know there's more tenants out there. We've got more choice about who we want to choose. But their affordability to avoid rent arrears growing at the rate that they have been is the key thing for me. So what are the warning signs that us as landlords should be aware of to prevent ourselves falling into the trap of what's going to become a bigger issue? Tenants not communicating to us or not giving us access is a bit of a warning sign. If rent is 2 days late, 1 day late, on time, 5 days late, sort of all over the place a bit, you want to be aware of that. Changes in circumstances, whether if you've got sharers, if one of them's moved out, boyfriend, girlfriend issues. One of my tenants, there is a serious note to all of this. I went into the pub near the office, and the guy behind the bar, I recognised he was my tenant. And I was like, great, I'm being served first. I'm like, well, what are you doing here? And he was like, oh, I've got a second job just to help make all the sums stack up. Now, my excitement from being served first went to, oh my goodness, is my rent going to be paid next year? Being aware of your tenants is really important. Be aware if they start to make complaints. That's a bit of a warning sign that something's up and that they're going to create a bigger issue. And I think there's just stuff that we can do at the beginning when we're choosing our tenants, when we're doing viewings. And I'm a real fan of asking sort of open-ended questions when you're on the phone to them and when you're physically doing a viewing. Have you lived with these other tenants before? What was your previous rent? What is your take-home pay? Are you in a probationary period? Reference your tenants as well. It shouldn't be the case of referencing them and maybe asking a couple of questions. I think it should be asking some questions, looking at them in the eyes, getting that gut feel factor and supporting it with tenant referencing. And active management, whether that be going into the pub or meeting up with your tenants, it's really important to understand what's going on in their world so you can prevent rent arrears occurring in your particular environment. I think active management is really important. It's about keeping on top of rent. Make sure you've got in your diary when rent is due. Don't put your head in the sand and wait 2-3 weeks before you say something. Text them, email, call them on the day rent is due and say it is due today. Is everything okay? Maybe in the first few months you might want to set a reminder and let them know 2-3 days beforehand. And this one I'm a big fan of, is having a form of communication. It's very good letting them know your phone number, but make sure that they feel able to call you or email you or whatever it may be if there's a particular issue. Because if they don't feel they can cross that bridge and actually call you to say, look, I've lost my job or I can't afford the rent, you want them to be able to tell you that. And it's really important to create that platform. Don't just think giving them your number is the end of the day. It's making sure that there's a dialogue and that they're able to communicate with you. And do meet up with them from time to time, understand them, and in my case, that means I can go to the pub a bit more. There's more of that in a guide that we do, which has got a voucher for £40 off the first time you use Upad. And I'm clearly around for the rest of the evening, apparently. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you.